Hello everyone, this is Silver de la Rosa and I welcome you to On Silver Screen, where learning is interesting. We are now at episode 5 of our Season 2 Procurement and Tendering. And from this episode onwards until the end of the season, we are going to talk about tendering. Today, we are going to discuss the tendering strategies. Please support this channel by hitting like on the video or sharing the video to your friends, especially those who are preparing for their APC. And if you haven't done yet, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified every time I upload a new video. On this discussion, we aim to have a better understanding of tendering by differentiating tendering against procurement, understanding the benefits of tendering, and knowing the roles of quantity surveyor in tendering. We will also get to know the methods of selection of tendering contractors and the different tendering strategies. The primary reference of this discussion is the RICS Guidance Notes on Tendering Strategies, first edition. Let us review our definition of procurement and tendering from our previous video. Procurement is defined as the overall act of obtaining goods and services from external sources and includes deciding the strategy on how those goods are to be acquired by reviewing the client's requirements and their attitude to risk. If you want to know more about procurement, please visit my previous video on episode 1 of the season where I discuss about the procurement strategy. And also on the succeeding video up until the episode 4, I discuss about the different procurement routes. Now, let's go back to our topic. Let us see what is the definition of tendering. Tendering is defined as an important phase of procurement strategy which involves the implementation of chosen procurement route, obtaining the price through bidding process and appointment of selected contractor. So tendering is only part of a procurement process. And we have to take note that the chosen procurement route should not affect the tendering strategy. Now let us see what are the benefits of tendering. Having a robust tender techniques can help to ensure the positive tender results through accountability, because as a QS or as a part of a team who recommends a contractor to the client, there are certain degree of responsibility that rest on your shoulder. You have an obligation to report to the client or oversight committee in the case of public projects, and you will be accountable to your actions that leads to your recommendation. Hence, a robust tendering technique could give you a confidence that you have carried out your obligations with due diligence. Next is auditability. In line of being accountable, tendering procedures will leave an audit trail that could verify the integrity of the process. The tender exercise can ensure that everything has been picked up. This is because that there are different set of eyes that are looking into the requirements or the documents, not only the client team, but also the multiple tenderers. Therefore, there is a greater chance that whatever that was missed out by one party will be discovered by the other party. And this can be revealed during the tender queries or tender interviews. Another benefit is that there is parity, or the tender exercise puts all the tenderers in a level playing field. Therefore, there is a fairness in competition process. Another advantage of tendering is that it will help reduce the claims of corruption. Because of the above reasons, corruption will be minimized, if not eliminated. And tendering ensures that the correct price has been paid for the proposed works. Because of having a multiple tender returns, you will have a good data to benchmark the price that you are paying for the project. So these are only few of the benefits of tendering exercise when done properly. Now, as a quantity surveyor, what will be your role in the tendering process or in the tendering exercise? Notwithstanding the detailed terms of any appointment or contractual obligation, as a quantity surveyor, you should be able to fulfill the following duties. First, taking the initial brief from the employer in order to understand the requirements for tendering. For example, does the client need the contractor to be on board before the design is completed? Or is there a need for a contractor's input to complete the design? Or maybe does the client need the contractor to lead the design process? So this requirement will help you choose a suitable tendering strategy together with the project team. And you need also to collate and produce the invitation to tender documents and issue them in an appropriate manner. The quantity surveyor should also deal with tender queries and ensure that they are answered in a timely manner. And open and analyze the tender returns, collate the tender queries from the design team, and produce a tender report, which should include the recommendation of the preferred contractor status agreed by the whole project team. And advise the client on the complex tendering issues as appropriate. So these are only the minimum requirement or the minimum services that the quantity surveyor should render during the tendering exercise. Let us now talk about tendering strategies. So in selecting a tendering strategy, first you must understand how to select the tendering contractors. And selection of tendering contractors could either be through open tendering, selective tendering, or single contractor selection. After you have selected your contractor or decided the route to choose your contractor, you should know what are the types of tendering. So the main types of tendering are, it can be a single stage tendering, two-stage tendering, or negotiated tender. So there are also variants of these tendering strategies, but these are the main types. Other types of tendering can also be serial tendering, early contractor involvement, and e-tendering. I will discuss e-tendering separately on a separate video, while on the succeeding slides, I will discuss all of this in detail. Let us now talk about the selection of tendering contractors. First, let us discuss the process of open tendering. In open tendering, the tender opportunity is published in different publications, journals, or websites. And any interested party who satisfies certain qualifying criteria may submit their tender offer. But in larger projects, these interested parties may need to submit their expression of interest. And once this expression of interest is received by the client team, certain pre-qualification process will be carried out either through questionnaires or interviews. And the qualified contractors will be shortlisted and will be given an invitation to bid. Should this contractor wishes to pursue further the project, they will be given a chance to submit their tender offer. The advantages of open tendering are it offers a greater transparency. It also allows new emerging contractors to secure contract. It is because that anyone who satisfies the requirement or qualified will be given a chance to submit their tender. So even though you are new in the market, you will still have a chance to secure a project. Then it provides a healthy and competitive approach, and there is a high competition in pricing, which could result to greater value for clients' money. The following are the disadvantages of open tendering process. First, it is a slow and costly process. Next is that it attracts offers from unsuitable contractor. This is because that even though a contractor has a bad reputation in the market, as long as he satisfies the tendering criteria, he can still submit his tender offer. This will now lead to the next disadvantage, which is open tendering requires a greater effort in pre-qualification assessment. Given that the client team will receive a large number or a large volume of tender offers, and on top of that, the client team still need to weed out these unsuitable contractors, it will take a longer time to complete, hence it requires a greater effort. The next disadvantage is that it requires a clear and strict adherence to procedures, and it limits the possibility of building long-term relationship. Why is that so? For example, you are a client with a multiple project, and currently you have a contractor that is good contractor. But if you select an open tendering process, in your next project, this good contractor will still be treated as equal of those contractors whom you don't know. That is why it limits the possibility of building a long-term relationship with your existing good contractor. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of open tendering. Let us now talk about the selective tendering process. In selective tendering, the list of shortlisted contractors will come from the client team. So unlike in open tendering, that the shortlisted contractor will come from the evaluation of expression of interest from those interested qualified contractors. Now, in selective tendering, this list will come from the client team, and only these qualified contractors on the list of client team will be given an invitation to tender. And should the contractor be interested in the project, then they will submit their tender offer. So this is selective tendering process. Now, the advantages of selective tendering are it is a cost and time efficient compared to open tendering. Next is only the contractor that are known to be qualified to undertake the project may join the tender. So it will be an easier process. It is easier to assess. Next is that it provides the client with the confidence that the project requirements will be satisfied because the client knew that the contractor that are invited for tender are qualified contractors. Of course, there will be also disadvantages in selective tendering. And these are potential for innovation is reduced because those contractors that are new and maybe innovative contractor will not be known to the client team, hence they will not be invited for tender. Next is bias to contracting firms may be introduced. This is because that only those contracting firms who are known to the client team will be invited. Those contracting firms that are good but not known to the client team will not be invited, so there is a bias to these contracting firms. Next is that the tender offers received may be higher. It is because that the contractor knew that they are already qualified and they have the confidence of the client team. It may result for them to submit a higher tender offer. Let us now talk about the next method of selection of tendering contractor, which is the single contractor selection. This method of contractor selection may be appropriate for highly specialist contracts where there are limited number of potential contractors in the market available. And this method works hand in hand with negotiation as a tender technique. So in single contractor selection, the preferred contractor is selected by the client team. And once the tender offer is received, negotiations can straight away commence. So if you can see, it is much simpler compared to open tendering and selective tendering process. And the advantages of single contractor selections are, it provides a greater confidence by working with a known supplier, and it reduces the time and cost allocated for tendering. Next is that early contractor involvement can be achieved because of shorter time to award the contract to a contractor. The specialties of the contractor can be used in developing the design at the early stage. Next is the contractor can be more transparent in pricing. Because of the absence of competition, the contractor can be open for his pricing strategies or pricing methods and also open for negotiation. But the disadvantages of single contractor selections are potential for innovation is reduced, the cost may be higher due to lack of competition, and lack of accountability of the selection process because you're only selecting a single contractor. There is no competition. The next disadvantage is that negotiation, if not handled properly, may cause adversarial relationship even at the early stage of the project. Negotiation is a very important aspect of this contractor selection because if not handled properly, there is a possibility that it will fail, and then the client team will need to go back to their step one, the selection of preferred contractor. Even though the contract will proceed, but the sour relationship is already present, then it will have a negative impact to the project as a whole. Therefore, negotiation should be handled properly. So this is the single contractor selection, its advantages and disadvantages. Let us now go to the tendering strategy. First, we will talk about the single stage tendering. This is the most common type of tendering strategy where invitation to tender is issued to a number of competing contractors who are all given a chance to bid for the project based on identical tender documentation. Thus, it is an effective strategy to obtain a competitive tender price for the whole of the construction works. The following are the process involved in single-stage tendering. First, tender documents which are identical in nature will be issued to the selected or to the qualified tenderers for them to submit their tender offer. And once this offer is received, it will be analyzed by the client team based on cost and quality. And the shortlisted tender offers will be subject to negotiations. From the time that the tender document is issued all the way to the submission of tender, this period is being controlled by the client team. And once the tender offer is submitted all the way to its award, the tender validity is being set by the contractor. But of course, if the tender validity period is not enough for the client team to make their decision, they may request the contractor to extend the validity of the tender. So this is the single-stage tendering. The next tendering strategy is two-stage tendering. Two-stage tendering is often used where time is constrained or if design process would benefit from the technical input of a contractor. So in a sense, it is used to obtain the early appointment of the contractor. The contractor submission will then be assessed using a scoring matrix, and the contractor who gained the highest score will usually become the preferred contractor. So what happened in these stages of tendering? During the first stage, the preferred contractor may be chosen based on the quality of their bid, the quality of their team, preliminaries, overheads, and profit allowances, method statements, schedule of rates that will be used in the second stage, design fees, and pre-construction services. The preferred contractor will then join the design team on a consultancy basis using a pre-construction service agreement or PCSA. The preferred contractor will then work with the professional team to complete the design. After the design is completed, the second stage will commence. During the second stage, the contract price will be agreed based upon the established rates on the first stage, and items that were not previously considered will be negotiated. Or, the preferred contractor will submit a bid for the works, and usually the contract price will be negotiated. So this is two-stage tendering. Let us now talk about the negotiated tender. A negotiated tender is effectively a single-stage tender with a single contractor who returns with an initial price. This is then negotiated with the client's professional team, usually the professional quantity surveyor or PQS. So what happened here is that the single contractor will submit its tender offer, and the professional quantity surveyor will evaluate this tender offer. And then negotiation will commence in order to agree with the contract price. This is negotiated tender. Another tendering strategy that is gaining popularity, especially on infrastructure projects, is early contractor involvement or ECI. ECI is a form of negotiated tender, but emphasis is put on the contractor as the lead designer from the outset of the project. So here, the contractor becomes the lead designer. ECI involves the creation of a designer-contractor team led by the contractor. And the contractor selection for ECI is similar to two-stage tendering because it is done not on a cost basis, but rather on the quality of the team and the bid of the contractor. Now, there are different models of ECI, and they vary from each other depending on the stage where the builders become involved in the project. But these different models of ECI will not be discussed in this video. So if you wanted to know more about ECI, further reading is advised. Let us now discuss another tendering strategy called serial tendering. For serial tendering, it is more of a hybrid or advanced method of tendering which combines a normal competitive tender with negotiation. It is often used for clients or used by clients who have a number of phases of similar works. Let us further discuss the process of serial tendering. When the preferred contractor is selected, the accepted tender offer usually includes a notional bill of quantities or schedule of works. And the rates or price submitted for the first phase can be used or negotiated for a similar project within the agreed period of time. So the serial tendering effectively reduces the time and cost allocated for tendering of similar projects. Another tendering strategy that can be applied for a large projects with a number of similar works or phases is framework tender. Frameworks are approved supplier or contractor list. And similar to tender for a contract, the framework tender is usually a mix of quality and price. The contractor will submit a tender to secure a place in the framework. And when the need arises, the client will simply select the suitable framework supplier or contractor and then instruct them to start the work. So let me explain further the process of framework tender. So for framework tender, one or more supplier will submit its tender for a particular item in order to be included in the framework. And when the need arises, the most suitable contractor will be instructed to carry out the works. And when the project is too large for the first contractor to handle, a second contractor will be selected to carry out the next phase of the work or the other parts of the work. Now, if more than one contractor is suitable, the client may introduce a secondary selection process to assess which contractor could give the best value for the project. And also, framework tender would effectively reduce the cost and time needed for tendering process. Let us now talk about the effectiveness of main types of tendering strategy in relation to common procurement truths. While all the types of tendering strategies can be used to any procurement truth, it is reasonable to say that some strategies can suit certain procurement truth better than others. Let us begin with discussing design and build procurement truth. We will tabulate the tendering strategy, its advantages and disadvantages. If you apply single-stage tendering to design and build procurement truth, it will give you the advantage of having the most competitive price. While the disadvantages are, it may lead to higher risk allowance due to unclear client requirements. Also, there will be a longer project schedule due to implication of tender period in the program. Now, if you're going to apply two-stage tender on design and build procurement truth, it will give you the following advantages. First, increase of contractor involvement in design. Next is, there will be some degree of competition. Also, there is an ability to overlap the design and tendering stage. Therefore, it can be a shorter project schedule. But the disadvantages are, there is a lack of competitiveness during the second stage, and the program implication to include a tender period. Although this can be overlapped with the design, you can only overlap certain part of the tender period, but not the entire tender period. Now, if you are going to use negotiated tender in the design and build procurement truth, you will have the most contractor involvement in the design process. Also, there will be a shorter project duration since the schedule for tendering is not required because you are going to call the contractor or the preferred contractor and negotiate with them directly. There is no need to include the tendering process in the schedule. But the disadvantages of having a negotiated tender when applying it to design and build procurement truths are, there is a lack of competitiveness, and it may not be suitable for public procurement contracts because public procurement contracts has a lot of requirements, and one of them is the transparency and auditability of the process, which the negotiated tender doesn't offer much of this transparency and auditability of the process. Now, let's talk about the effect of tendering strategy when applied to traditional procurement truth. If you use single-stage tender to traditional procurement truth, it will give you the advantage of having the most competitive price and the most linear form of tendering. Linear in a sense that it is sequential. So one step will be carried out, after that, the next step will be carried out, and the next. There is no overlapping of sequence. Well, the disadvantages are no contractor involvement at all, and may lead to higher level of provisional sums and risk items on client side. Also, there is a longer project schedule due to implication of tender in the program. If you use two-stage tender in design and build procurement truth, you will have the advantage of contractor involvement that may reduce outstanding design or construction risk. Also, there is the ability to overlap the design and tendering process where it could lead to a shorter project duration. But the disadvantages are, there is no incentive for a contractor to mitigate risk as a traditional contract will leave most of the risk to the client side. So there is no point for them or no incentive for them at all. to help the client mitigate this risk. The overall project program may have to accommodate a tendering period. That is, if the design and tendering cannot be overlapped. Now, if negotiated tender is applied to traditional procurement route, the following will be the advantages. First, the contractor involvement throughout the process will enable a more effective mitigation of risk in the design. And next is that it will give you a shorter project duration since the schedule for tendering is not required. While the disadvantages are, since there is no competition, it may result to a higher contract offers. And it may not be suitable for public procurement contracts for the reasons discussed in our previous slides. Now, let's take a look at the effectiveness of tendering strategies when it comes to management procurement route. Management procurement route consists of construction management and management contracting. And single-stage tendering is not applicable to this procurement route. While two-stage tender will give you an advantage of some degree of competitiveness for preliminaries, overheads, and profits compared to negotiated tender. And the disadvantage is that there is an increase of program to accommodate the tender period. So compared to negotiated tender, two-stage tender in management procurement route will give you a longer project duration. While negotiated tender will give you the advantage of shorter project duration since there is no tendering schedule required. And the disadvantage is that since there is no competition on preliminaries, overheads, and profits or program, the only thing that the management team or the client team can do is to negotiate with the contractor. So that is why it is a disadvantage. Join me next on Silver Screen as we discuss tender documentation. Please support this channel by hitting like on the video and sharing this video to your friends, especially those who are preparing for APC. And if you haven't done yet, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so that you will be notified once a new video is uploaded. Thank you for watching and see you next episode.